and marine resource lovers. I'm delighted to be here today to share this with you. This new movie, this is the first time that it's been shown anywhere. We hope it's the first of many more movies to feature the very large marine protected areas in the Pacific, or they call it, they're not designated as marine national monuments. I was going to say, so before we see the movie, I'm just going to say some just hit some highlights of our program, take the opportunity to talk a little bit about our Marine National Monuments program here in Hawaii. So there's three. The Rose Atoll is in American Samoa, and the Pacific Remote Islands are west and southwest of Hawaii, and then the Marianas Trench is in the Northern Mariana Islands, or the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, based out of Saipan. And the marine protected areas, or the monuments, are managed by the NOAA and the Fish and Wildlife Service in partnership with the American Samoa government and the CNMI government. How many are familiar with Hanauma, the Northwest Hawaiian Islands monument? Just one? Two? Okay, so the Hanauma is managed by the NOAA National Marine Sanctuaries Office, where these three new monuments were designated are managed by the NOAA Fisheries Service Office, where I work. There's 4 people in my office. We work together in managing these monuments. So the Marianas Trench, you can see off to the left there, it includes mainly the sea floor and the trench, the deepest parts of the waters there, some of the deepest parts on Earth. And then we have the Pacific Remote Islands. There's 7 of the islands here, highlighted in green, and the 3 are the ones that President Obama just recently established, or increased the size out to the exclusive economic zone limit. And then we have down here in the bottom the American Samoa, which is one of the smallest atolls on the planet. So that's what we're talking about here, and we'll see in the movie. Here's our little mission statement. We're here to protect the natural and cultural resources within the monuments, and we do so through primarily research and exploration, and science and public education. So Rose Atoll, starting off here, it's also called Muliava, which means the last channel for the Manua Islands. So as you leave Manua, there's the Rose Atoll. And in Samoa, it's also called Nu'u'omano, or village or island of the birds, because there's so many hundreds of thousands of seabirds there. And there's many giant clams. It's abundant with clams that have been depleted around the planet and many other areas. And French explorer Louis Freycinet discovered Rose Atoll in 1819, and he named it after his wife, Rose is her name, which coincidentally, the fringing reefs that are there are very prominent rose color, as you can see in the left. So it's coincidental. And then the Rose Atoll was just added to the National Marine Sanctuary of American Samoa in 2013. For the Pacific Remote Islands Monument, the 7 islands I mentioned, and a little history there. There's remnants of the Polynesian and Micronesians who visited there through the guano mining in the 1850s and the whaling industry in the 1900s. And from 1932 to 1945, the United States was trying to establish its presence in the Pacific Islands. And so President Roosevelt sent the Hui Panala'au Hawaiian colonists there, a group of Hawaiian men who lived there, and helped build the runways for the islands, and the one that Amelia Earhart was supposed to land on, but unfortunately didn't make it there. It was used by Pan American Airlines. Their Kingman and Wake were in the 1930s. And then just a couple years ago, the Fish and Wildlife Service got the money needed to remove 3 wrecks that were there at Palmyra and Kingman, and they were starting to damage the reefs. So that was a huge accomplishment. And then for the Marianas Trench, this is where the Pacific plate is being thrust into the Philippine plate at the Pacific Rim of Fire. So it creates tremendous phenomena underneath the waters with submarine volcanoes and hydrothermic vents. And it's just a fascinating place that we we learn about with every new visit there, learn new things with every new expedition. Has some of the largest mud volcanoes on Earth. Here in the, that's Farallon de Parajos, one of the 3 northernmost islands in the monument, simmering. And then the picture underneath, those are CO2 bubbles that are coming from the vents underneath the seafloor there. And here we have really extreme temperatures, hot and cold with the volcanic activity. And this is one of the only places where we know that photosynthesis and chemosynthesis are taking place at the same time. So a pretty cool place to learn from. And so far to date, the way we've been managing the programs is through grants or some of the projects we want to have accomplished. So the first thing I'll just tell you a couple about some of the grants here. The first one was at Rose Atoll. We funded an expedition to Rose Atoll for the high talking chiefs and some students to go there to get in touch with their cultural connections and have an in-person visit with a little walk around the atoll. And so they produced a short little film and some education products from that. And then for the Pacific Remote Islands in 21, we held a workshop to get a better understanding about the seabirds and the pelagic fish and their relationship with the seabirds. So we had scientists from all throughout the Pacific come and identify what we don't know, what we do know, what further research needs to be done to better understand that relationship. And then we Marine Conservation International Institute won a grant to do an assessment of the ecological history of the Central Pacific region. And then this is where the grant was awarded for this film we're about to see. Open Boat Films won the grant for produced our Deepest Waters film. And then, and the crab run by. And then for the Marianas Trench, we had the NOAA Pacific Islands Fisheries Science Center conduct a traditional assessment of the fishing patterns in the northern Marianas Islands, which helped us establish the non-commercial fishing regulations there and the management of the fisheries. And then for all of the monuments in 2013, a grant was awarded to produce a musical video sing-along for kids 5 to 12 years old. And it's really funny. It's a cute little film that lasts 9 minutes. And then right now there's underway lesson plans to learn about the monuments are being developed for high school students. And there's a reef monitoring project going on in American Samoa. And then for 2014, the grants that are currently being implemented are the Marine Invasive Species Control Study and then Climate Change Vulnerability Assessment. And then since all of our management activities want to make sure they're based on sound science and relevant current science, we work very close with the NOAA Pacific Islands Fisheries Science Center. And together we held a workshop in Kona, Hawaii in 2011 in conjunction with a broader international conference to bring in scientists from all around to talk about what do we know about the Marianas Trench, what don't we know, where do we want to go from there. And then from there, the Science Center began developing a science plan for the Marianas Archipelago and the monument. We held another workshop in Saipan with scientists from Guam and Saipan and Honolulu here to look at more of that, what we know, what we don't know, identifying those gaps and moving forward with the science plan and supporting the management of the monument. And then finally, for the Okeanos Explorer, this is run from the NOAA Office of Ocean Exploration and Research. It's the only flagship that's dedicated to research in the deep oceans. And they have a really great education curriculum and marine education products called Why Do We Explore? How Do We Explore? What do we expect to find? And it meets all the national education standards. So we're bringing this to the teachers of Saipan and Guam, since it's right there in their backyard, the rim of fire and all these things that they find, all the research conducted from the Okeanos Explorer. And they're coming here this year in 2015 to do work at Hanauma and in American Samoa, and then in 2016 over to the Pacific Remote Islands and the Marianas Trench. So with that said, how many people want to go to these places and snorkel and scuba dive, huh? I do. I want to go there so bad, and I can't get it. We can't go there. It's so far. It costs so much money. It's so deep. So let us have the movie take us there. We'll come back and answer questions after.
My name is Eric Brewer. I work for NOAA. I'm the science coordinator for the 3 new national marine monuments that were designated in 2009. They were established by President George Bush using what's called the Antiquities Act. He established the Marianas Trench Marine National Monument, Rose Atoll Marine National Monument, and the Pacific Remote Islands Marine National Monument. 192,000 square miles of ocean habitat is protected under this Marine National Monument. Some of the deep sea habitats are unexplored. They're so varied and unique. The imagination cannot even think of some of the things that are down there. The shallow water environments are full of amazing corals and reef fish, and there's still a lot to learn. We don't know a lot of what's in these waters. These areas are amazing. Yeah, they're special in so many ways. First, we have to remember that they're special to the indigenous people. This has been part of their culture and their life. This is their home. And so these areas are special to them, and they're special to the rest of us. And then it opens our imagination to what's out there, what's in the ocean. 7/10, as they say, the planet is covered in water. And these areas show us the amazing, not only life, but structure and ecosystems that are there.
People, they hear of Muriaba, but they've never been there. It is far. Our ancestors with our equipment many years ago were able to say that there was a current that ended at Rose Atoll. And sure enough, the southern equatorial current ends right in the channel that goes into Rose Atoll, Muriaba. Muri meaning end, Aba meaning channel.
This is the way that North America was. Pre-colonial times, passenger pigeons used to black out the sky. They used to migrate in the millions.
What I know about this place is not for you. It's just for these birds and all the animals. What I know, the Pacific is birds and animals. Just a little tiny island that you can walk around in a half an hour.
It's a very special place. And it was named Rose in the 1800s when an explorer came by with his wife. Yeah, a lot of folks do think it's because of the color of the reef. The reef here is made out of mostly crustose coralline algae, rock hard type algae, and it's very pinkish. But it's a convenient coincidence.
Coming to a place like this, you see wildlife as it used to be. And I think it probably, for the average person, that would be pretty overwhelming. But for someone like me, I actually love it.
The island used to be pretty much 100% Pisonia trees, now we're down to 5. And so Bob is here looking at the ants and how the ants relate to the scale insects. Very similar to an aphid. And it sucks on the leaves of the Pisonia trees. And the Pisonias here have been horribly infested. It's been a problem throughout the tropics, everywhere where there are Pisonia trees. And here it's been particularly bad.
There's been some human contact over the years anyway, and during those visits, people bring in their crazy bananas or whatever to really come onto the island, and these non-native insects get here.
You need a permit to come visit here. And we're very strict with our quarantines coming here to try to prevent the introduction of invasive species. That is a huge concern.
The ants are not native, except for possibly one.
These 3 species that we're dealing with, nobody has ever eradicated them before from any sized area, so it's a new challenge. We think it's possible because there has been some success with other ants, and it was just important enough to try. Pisonia are important because it's a native tree out here. Old photographs show that the island was dominated almost exclusively by Pisonia at one time, and they're critical for bird roosting and for nutrient cycling. They're really important as far as a big input of leaf biomass.
It's a lot of different partners who work together. Fish and Wildlife Service, National Marine Fisheries Service, National Marine Sanctuaries Program, and the American Samoa government. We're working with NOAA, with their coral ecosystem division, and they have these units called ecological acoustic recorders, or EARs, and they put them in underwater. And it's basically a tape recorder with a hydrophone on it, an underwater microphone. They have one in the Ava, they have another one outside on the reef. They will record things like humpback whales singing, shrimp snapping, and they can tell us when boats are coming in and out, so we know if there's unauthorized usage here.
Within the lagoon, it's like that bluish green, and the reef is so healthy. All these colors of the rainbow. Although Rose is far away, it's still part of the American Samoa archipelago, and American Samoa people still look at it as belongs to them. They still come together when meetings are called to discuss and offer their opinions on how to better manage Rose Atoll. I don't think there's any other place in the world that I've seen like Mariana.
I never see any place unique like this place. It's like our place used to be before. So I think about this.
The Mariana Region is one of those places where plates are converging, one plate's going underneath another, creating lots of volcanism, and most of it's underwater. So in the Marianas, there's 9 islands, but there's over 50 submarine volcanoes. The Marianas Trench National Monument is made up of 3 units. We call them Island Unit, which is the northern bit of the Marianas Trench. It contains the water and the sediment of the areas surrounding the 3 northern islands, Hyracus, Mog, and Asuncion. You then have what we call the volcanic unit, which is made up of the hydrothermal vents and the underwater volcanoes, stretch all the way down the park. And then it's made up of the Marianas Trench, deepest trench on Earth. When we're writing the ecosystem science plans for the 3 monuments, we definitely make sure that local input is part of writing these ecosystem science plans. It's crucial because basically this is their environment. This is their traditions. This is their home.
Growing up in Saipan, I've learned a lot about the Chamorro ways of fishing and just the Chamorro culture and the values. A lot of the Chamorros and the Carolinians, they really rely on our resources, especially marine resources.
A lot of these monuments are not abstract ideas. You know, as we sit here and we think way out there in the ocean, this is their backyard. This is where they live. This is what they lived off of. This harvesting a lot of fish, and it's part of who and what they are. And so it's critical. They're part of any kind of planning, any kind of research or science that's done out there.
So we want the future generation to be able to see what we see.
If we talk about the Marianas Trench Marine National Monument, here we have a very unique area where we have a lot of volcanology, we have a lot of shifting geological movement, we have hydrothermal vents that are there, and the unique biota living on these vents.
Among the fantastic sites, we found a seamount that's erupting almost continuously, and that was really exciting because it was the first place in the world where we could see an active deep ocean eruption occurring. And yet there was still life living around the top of the seamount. It's so deep that there's no sunlight from the surface, so the whole ecosystem is based on the chemistry of these vent fluids, and so we're really interested in understanding the relationships between the chemistry and the biology and the volcanoes and the geology. Another incredible place had liquid CO2 coming out of the seafloor. That had only been seen at one other place before. Another place we went to had pools of molten sulfur on the seafloor. The sulfur was black because it had so much iron mixed in. The places we found with lots of sulfur seemed to have a lot of very dense biological communities. In that site, there were flatfish that hadn't been seen before, the first vertebrate we found. The interesting thing about the deep ocean vents is we were completely unaware of them until 1979 or so, when they were first discovered. And we discovered all kinds of new life forms that we had no idea existed. And it's really a fundamentally different kind of life on Earth. If there is life on other planets, it's going to be some microbe that's living in the ground, or maybe in some moon with some ocean under a bunch of ice. And so it's going to be more like these hydrothermal environments than the surface life on Earth. The Marianas, it's so unique. We started working there, we discovered all these new sites, new species, new phenomena. There's so many things that we've never seen before. All that contributed to the understanding that this really is a special place and should be designated as such, as a marine national monument.
As a refuge manager for the Fish and Wildlife Service, I get to go to very remote places and do surveys like this, and it's one of the most spectacular parts of my job, to come to these rare areas and see what very, very few people in the world get to see. When we come here, we're doing seabird surveys, shorebird surveys, insect surveys, marine debris, making sure there isn't any hazards for turtles on the beach. In general, the purpose is to check on it, monitor it. We get out here so rarely that we just want to kind of take the pulse of the island and see what's going on. These places are protected for very, very good reasons. We have wonderful breeding populations of seabirds here. There are millions of sooty terns that are nesting here right now. There are thousands of bass boobies and many other species of seabirds. I'd say there are most likely 12 to 13 species of seabirds here right now that are nesting and roosting. This is one of the last refuges, one of the last places for them to breed without seeing people and being disturbed by anthropogenic forces. There's some cultural heritage on the site. I'm sitting on the beacon that was created for Amelia Earhart. These beacons were put up on Howland, Baker, and Jarvis. And there used to be a historic camp here from the young Hawaiian men that settled the island. And there's the remnants of an old shipwreck. So there are signs of human habitation, but they're starting to crumble, and nature's winning the battle against that.
During a tow board survey, there's two tow boarders pulled behind the boat on 60-meter lines. Both divers are on scuba gear. I was a fish tow diver surveyor, and I was looking for reef fish above 50 centimeters, and I would identify the species and estimate the size of each fish that I saw. And my buddy is over there surveying the benthic community, looking at coral, algae, benthic fauna of the reef. During a 50-minute dive, we both documented the respective things that we're surveying. We actually surveyed the entire circumference of most of the small islands that we go to.
Yeah, one of the things that the tow diver surveys do document is the presence or absence of apex predators. And one of the amazing things about working in the Pacific remote island areas that we document a lot more shark populations. We would sometimes look over our shoulders and see 50 to 70 great reef sharks behind us. There's a lot more studies coming out that show just how important sharks are in healthy ecosystems and apex predators in general. So once you take the apex predators out, then everything that's further down the chain they potentially be severely affected. And these things don't bounce back right away. They take decades or potentially centuries for these things to recover.
These islands are spectacular. They're relatively pristine, relatively untouched. The beauty of the coral reef and all the marine life is just stunning.
If you were to peer beneath the ocean's blanket, most people see fish and they see coral. But what you don't see are all the organisms that live within inside the coral and the holes and under the rubble. ARMS are devices that we install on the reef floor in order to understand the cryptofauna of a coral reef community. When you first install it, it's like free space. It's this apartment complex that hasn't been inhabited. 2-3 years later, you have full occupancy. We have all these organisms that collect within a 9-inch square platform. And it's basically this entirely unseen, understudied community of organisms. We have these ARMS units across the Pacific and all the islands that we survey. It enables us to compare them across broad spatial, environmental, and human impact gradients. Places like this are really worth preserving. If we compare it to Oahu, for example, where there are over 1 million people, the reefs look completely different. These are really the baselines of what coral reefs and other ecosystems were like before. And if we don't have places like these that show us how it's supposed to be, how can we preserve the systems in our own backyard?
Kenya is an amazing place because it is an incredibly healthy ecosystem. These are what we call ecological baselines. These are systems, to the best of our knowledge, that are relatively intact. They've been free from fishing. There's not a whole city built up on these places. That allows us to really understand how ecosystems function and what their health should be. So I think what the oceanography team does is we provide some context to the biological observations. A lot of these things are very big picture types of things, like changing global climate is a big problem. What we do mostly on the cruises is actually replace the oceanographic instruments that we had deployed a couple of years ago. And also we do a suite of coring as well, where we take basically a drill and take a hole from the center of the coral. It's a little bit nerve-wracking. The nice thing about this cruise for me is that we went back 2 years ago, we did some smaller cores, and you can't even tell where we did the core. So I feel really comfortable that we're doing the right techniques and the coral not being affected negatively.
The Coral Coring Project is a collaborative effort with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and the main goal
is to retrieve coral cores so that we can see how coral changes its growth rate over time. Basically, the increase in the CO2 in the atmosphere is basically being drawn down into the ocean, and that's causing the ocean's pH to reduce and so become more acidified. The accretion rates are changing as the ocean chemistry changes, and we're pretty sure that that's due to anthropogenic input of CO2 into the atmosphere. People always ask me, what impact am I making on these coral reefs that are thousands of miles away? I'm an ocean chemist. I'm involved in the study of ocean acidification, and I tell them that your carbon dioxide footprint goes into the atmosphere, and that carbon dioxide over time will dissolve into the ocean. And so everyone in the world has an impact just based upon the way they live. It's incredibly important to protect these places. They teach us a lot.
You can't find some of those things on those islands. They're hard to find anywhere around the world.
If we can get to a point where we really understand how a natural system works, we can figure out how to better manage a system that is impacted by humans.
We don't know all the answers. We haven't even explored all the corners of our own planet. These areas show us the amazing, not only life, but structure and ecosystems that are there.
As marine national monuments, I think they need to be studied. I think it's important that people see what it's like for a reef, but it hasn't got a lot of pressures on it. You know, the ocean provides sustenance, recreation, and a healthy life. I think a fundamental societal goal should really be to minimize our footprint on this planet and better coexist with the natural environment and the world's oceans.
Everyone is connected to the ocean, even if you're not close to it. Being out here really helps me realize that everything that we do has an impact on the earth, and everything eventually reaches the sea.
With the changes in the world now, with the climate, the weather, etc., we need to keep reminding our people that yes, we still need to be good stewards of the ocean, take care of what's in it for our future generation.
Never forget to, it can never
Sorry about that. Okay. So, any questions?
What do you think? Any questions, anybody?
That was awesome.
Northern Marianas Trench. How is it that the U.S. has jurisdiction over it? Is it that close to island or atoll?
Yeah, there's a special relationship with the territory and Commonwealth of the Mariana Islands in the United States. Same with the American Samoa, Puerto Rico, and other territories affiliated with the United States.
So it's like within, what, 200 miles?
Yes, it's in the U.S. exclusive economic zone. Each one of these monuments is within an EEZ, and there's 50 nautical miles from the coastline out. Except for the 3 items in the Pacific Remote Islands that were just expanded all the way out to the very end, 200 miles. Any questions?